Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, opportunity zones are very interesting. Uh, we looked at it in terms of the opportunity, um, particularly for small minority and women-owned businesses. And and we went to the state legislature to try and get some opportunity zone language for the state of Maryland, because we saw some challenges, the way the opportunity zone was structured, particularly for minority businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to see how we could modify it so that it would work. I mean, the opportunity zone, depending on how you look at it, could be a double-edged sword,
Mm-hmm.
if you will. And so that's something we are still looking at to try and help it work for everyone, because we looked at it for in a number of ways, and most of the money, as we saw it, was going to really wind up going into real estate.
Yeah, I think that's what's happened, because
Yes.
it just fits with the timing and the risk level, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and what
famous.
happens is if you go in and you upgrade the real estate, if you will, the current residents probably won't be able to afford to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in that respect, it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
And we really very concerned, still concerned about it. And we went to our state legislators and shared it with them. We said, look, the state need to do something, to offset this,
Right.
because all the people that are in the opportunity zones, if it goes like it is now, they won't be there.
Right. What ideas did you have for that? I mean, is it anchoring some affordability in the housing stock, or what?
Well, some of that, it was a number of things we did. We wanted to actually introduce state legislation so that there are some advantages for the people that currently reside in these opportunity zones in terms of housing, in terms of jobs, et cetera, because essentially we told the state representatives who represented these areas, we said, look, guys, you may look around and all your constituents are gone.
Right.
Which means you won't be.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay.
There's these neighborhood trust ideas, trying to figure out some share that could give back to the neighborhood, but it's besides
neighborhood
housing. What other ideas were you thinking of?
The neighborhoods need jobs.
Jobs. Yeah.
Okay. Bottom line.
Yeah.
They need jobs. They need businesses to be in those areas. They need entrepreneurs, if you will, for these areas. The people that live in these areas are very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Okay. And so there needs to really do an analysis of what are the entrepreneurial opportunities in these neighborhoods that are there and that are not there, and try and identify neighborhood residents that has ideas in terms of entrepreneurship. And then you really have to have two really components to it. You need capital, but you also going to need training, if you will. A lot of these folks are natural entrepreneurs, okay, but sometimes they're not in the right areas.
Mhm.
Some of it is illegal, okay. So, but what you do is you say, hey, come on in here, guys and ladies, let's sit down and talk about really what's your skill set. What do
Mhm.
you like to do? Here's how you've been hustling and whatnot, you know, and led you to some problems. But let's sit down and talk about how we can build a strategy or develop a strategy that fits your skill set. And you'll be surprised how skilled and entrepreneurial these folks are. As you said, I'll talk about my background. I'm from a family of entrepreneurs. And so in the community, there are all kinds of skills that just need to be developed and then accompanied with some training and then, you know, access to capital. Now, as I go through a presentation, you know, I'll talk about a concept that we developed called SAM, and we call it our success assurance model.
Mhm.
And we are working with most of the folks in our portfolio wind up going through it, but it sharpens their business skills, and they don't have to have been graduated from Carnegie Mellon or Yale or Harvard. You know, it really comes down to good business sense, and most of them, believe it or not, have pretty good business sense.
Mhm.
You know, because they've had to hustle and do things to survive. And so, okay, let's now take those innate skills and what you've used, and let's put some structure to it.
Yeah.
You know, and identify what you're good at. So the bottom line is to really create those jobs there as you develop it. These opportunity zones, you have in mind the people in these opportunity zones.
Right.
Not saying, hey, we're going to come in here with this model, okay, and this model typically wind up the cost of living. The folks that are there can't afford it.
Right.
You know, so that's kind of how we shared it with our Maryland Legislative Black Caucus, and saying, you know, how can we make this a win-win scenario?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's still something, you know, that we are dealing with. But at the end of the day, as I talk, you know, our mantra is capitalism without capital doesn't work, Kate. You know?
Yeah. Let's start with your family of origin. I know from our previous conversation. Well, I wanted to introduce you. Let me just introduce you. Welcome to Stanley Tucker. Stanley Tucker has more than 30 years of diversified business experience with a strong emphasis on lending, venture capital investing, and the development of socially or economically disadvantaged small businesses. Mr. Tucker is president, chief executive officer, and co-founder of Meridian Management Company. The firm manages 4 comprehensive program funds: the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, Maryland Casino Business Investment Fund, Community Development Ventures, and MMG Ventures, which provides its clients with every opportunity a company needs to grow and succeed. Mr. Tucker also serves as the managing partner of MMG Ventures and president of Community Development Ventures. Prior to MMG, he was executive director of the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority from 1981 to 1995. MSBDFA is a self-sufficient state agency that assists socially or economically disadvantaged businesses. Combined, MMG has managed programs have provided over $232 million in financing to small minority and women-owned businesses in Maryland. Mr. Tucker provides the vision for the overall organization. He's involved in the marketing strategy, initiating, structuring, syndicating, and monitoring the investments as well as review of financial reports and financial plans and its family of funds. He will be materially involved in the analysis. I'm giving his PR, the statement from, this is reassuring the future clients that he will be centrally involved in the analysis. But Mr. Tucker was the vice president of the Park Heights Development Corporation, a community-based economic development corporation located in one of Baltimore's highest crime and unemployment areas from 1980 to 1981. And while you were there, he raised $1.2 million for the first stage development of a community industrial park and garnered additional funding for a community business loan fund, which he oversaw. Prior to joining, PHDC was a credit analyst for Equitable Trust Community of Baltimore. Mr. Tucker is a nationally sought after speaker and consultant on minority business development. His present and past civic responsibilities include, and it's a long list, chairman of the Golden Bears Association, the National Association of Investment Companies, President's Roundtable, Baltimore Youth Alliance, the MDDC Minority Supplier Development Council. I could go on and on. I think I'm going to stop there so we have time to actually talk to Stanley, but your reputation precedes you, and we're just so excited to have you joining us and looking forward to learning from this wealth of experience you have in this area. And I should also say my husband is from Baltimore, and I grew up in DC going to Orioles games, and we have a hard time when the Orioles play the Sox because my kids were born in Boston. But Ed roots for the Orioles every time. It's no question for him. So Stanley, you come from a family of entrepreneurs. Tell us a little bit about that family history, a long generational
Yes, I am. Both parents were entrepreneurs. My grandparents were entrepreneurs, and my great-grandparents were entrepreneurs. My grandparents, my father had his own construction company, and when I was 6 years old, I was on the truck going down to the job. His father also had two entrepreneurial areas. He was a farmer as well as he was a contractor. And my great-grandparents, back at that time, particularly on my mother's side, was a farmer and a home builder. And all doing history on these folks, they were very shrewd. Land. I'm originally from South Carolina, so land. We were always taught that land is the basis of all independence, and so they were very big on owning land. When I say land, lots of land. Okay, there's a whole story behind that, but I won't bore you with that. But they were landowners, they were builders, and passed it on to my father, who had his own construction business, and that's where I learned business, period. And so I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what, because that's all I knew growing up in my family. So I wound up doing that. That's the entrepreneurial experience. And so if you, my sisters and brothers were entrepreneurs, always dipped in dad on the side. So we grew up in an entrepreneurial environment from day one. 6 years old, I was on the truck going to work with my dad.
Did that mean that there was kind of family capital that was interested in supporting your generation of business entrepreneurship?
Not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I really learned about the whole capital aspects of it when I went to college, and then from college to graduate school is when I really learned about it, because I studied it. But just from working around them and seeing how they made ends meet, because there was not a whole lot of capital. My father and my grandparents, they can go to the banks. Okay. And that's still today, actually. So they had to really work with each other. And what they did, just to give an example how entrepreneurial and creative they were. And for example, my dad, it's unbelievable when I think about it now. I could take you down to South Carolina and take you to whole subdivisions that his company built. Okay. And the way they did it, the different skill levels that was needed on the job, they all came together and made some sacrifices initially to get the work. And then actually, they were really, in a way, they were equity investors early on. Probably didn't even know it, but they were equity investors in this. And so they brought their expertise to the table to help build the buildings, schools. My dad, I can remember years ago, my dad was building whole high schools up. And then you need, especially now, you need surety bonding. So how the hell did he get surety bonding back then? When it's extremely difficult for a smaller minority business to get surety bonding now. But they had different strategies and whatnot that worked, and I realized how brilliant they were, and really making it work for them and our whole community, in a very racist environment. But they had strong skills. And they came to them to get their skills to build these buildings and these schools, et cetera. So that's a whole study within itself as to how they were able to overcome the challenges to be successful entrepreneurs.
Wow, that's so interesting. So were they able to have an alternative bonding kind of insurance situation that assured that met that qualification, or was it not as rigorous of a qualification, and there are ways of providing?
Well, what they did, Katie, was this. They approached the owners of the subdivision. Okay, obviously they were white guys, and their expertise was so highly in demand because they were very, very, very good, and they can get a job done within a certain period of time. And the faster you get it to build these houses, etc., the faster the owner, the developer, could sell them and get their money back. And they knew that, and so they negotiated, with them. They said, "Hey, look, why don't we could help you if we could get this house within a certain period of time. Your margins can increase, because ordinarily it would take 3-4 months or longer, to get a house done. But if we could do that faster, and you could get it on the market faster, then they would benefit, from the owners in terms of the amount of money they make, et cetera." And they were also very smart. What they did, they didn't take all of it back. They would negotiate with the owners for the next job. Okay. So it was, as I look back and thinking about these guys and ladies, they were really very good entrepreneurs, So it worked for both.
So let's talk about your years at Morgan State and Carnegie Mellon. What did you start to understand about the way capital worked in that time, and the crucial role it was playing in
this is where it really gets interesting in my background? I have a very interesting background. My family moved from South Carolina to New York when I was in the 9th grade, and I was a decent athlete. I actually went to Morgan on an athletic scholarship, football and basketball. And that was probably the best experience in my life. I met my wife for 50 years, actually 51 years now there. And the quality of the education there were really superior, because when I look back in terms of how well they prepared us, actually they over-prepared us, because they say, look, you're going to be an African-American in a predominantly white community, society. Your skill set has to be very, very sharp. So they worked us to death, but we really appreciated. I think back to my professors back then, they were excellent. I mean, we used to get upset with them because they were working us so hard. But in hindsight, they really, really prepared us to become professionals, whatever direction we were going. In business, if you look back at the quality of the school and the rating of the business school at Morgan State University, it was very high. And the other thing is, one of my professors there was a gentleman by the name of Ray Haysbert. He owned a meat manufacturing company way back then called Park Sausage. You'll probably never heard of it, but they were all into the grocery stores around the country. You may have heard they say, more pork sausage, Mom. He was my marketing professor. So we had practitioners teaching us not just the book, not just the theory, but actually teaching us how to be entrepreneurs. And I would say back then, about 75% of my professors there, they were also entrepreneurs. So we were blessed to get not only the theory behind it, but also the practical aspects of what does it take to make them now. Okay, as a matter of fact, we are introducing language, putting language in the recreational marijuana bill that's going to be introduced probably in Maryland next year. Okay, and what we want to do is really duplicate when gaming came to Maryland. Mm-hmm. We were able to work with the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus to introduce language in the gaming bill that essentially says 1.5% of the gross proceeds for video lottery terminal coming from video lottery terminals will go into a fund to invest back into small minority and women-owned businesses. So we want to duplicate that with the recreational marijuana. They've already passed medical marijuana in Maryland, but the real serious money is in recreation.
Yeah.
So we want to duplicate that, a way of taking advantage of the times.
Mm-hmm. Has that been
now it's legal?
Has that been a big revenue stream? The 1.5 gross proceeds?
Yes. Yes. So much so that some of the legislators tried to dip into the pot for various, projects. Mm-hmm. They saw all this money coming in, okay, and so it's been a double-edged sword. However, there are other fund managers, even though it was our idea, and it took us 10 years to get it through.
Mm-hmm. And that was
our idea.
Was that from the Maryland Department of Business and Economic Development?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So anyway, we want to duplicate that strategy with recreational marijuana.
Mm-hmm. What kind of revenues are we talking about? Like $500 million, or what? 200 million, or what do you think is the potential?
Oh my goodness! Based on they've done some projections, and it's approaching $1 billion. And actually, as you see, all of the states are doing it, mm-hmm. especially in the time of COVID, where it's really had a a very damaging impact on state revenues. And so, with this, it's going to actually help state tax revenues. And so it's going to happen. There's no question about that. We just want a small 1.5%, of it. And it is, and it will be in the billions.
So let's talk about, we were going to talk about the SBA and then your move into, so this was some research I think you were doing as an SBA student, and it was part of what?
Well, actually, when I finished undergrad, I went to Carnegie Mellon University for my graduate degree. And if you're familiar with Carnegie Mellon, they're heavy research. And the professors wanted me to work on their research projects. And the research projects were very time consuming, and none of them interested me. Okay. And so I went to the dean of the school at that point, Professor Toby Davis, and I said, Toby, I'm not interested in any of this, man. If I'm going to spend this much time, on something, I want to make sure it benefit me, not these professors' research. It benefits them, but it doesn't benefit me. So he said, well, Stanley, what do you want to look at? I said, let me think about it. I'll come back to you. So I left and I thought about it, and I thought about my dad, and I thought about the problems of getting access to capital for minority businesses. So I went back to him and I said, Toby, I like to look at federal policies and its impact on access to capital for minority businesses. And he said, well, do you have some folks? I said, yes, I'll recruit some guys, which I did. I recruited some of my classmates, and he approved it. And what we did, we looked at federal policy, and specifically we looked at SBA, okay? And we went down to SBA and asked them for their data. And they pointed us to a closet. And we went to the closet, and literally all of their data was in and no analysis had been done on the data. And so we dug through it and did the analysis. And what jumped out at me, Kate, was lack of access to capital. That's what jumped out at me. And I think back to my dad, capital was a problem. They had to maneuver and do all kinds of things. And that hit me. Capital. Because my mantra is capitalism without capital does not work, Kate. Okay. So long story short, we did our research. Out of that, I saw that lack of access to capital was a problem. And I said, okay, where's the money? I said, the money in banks. So I went and got into a credit analysis training program at Equitable Bank in Baltimore. And I worked there for a couple of years, really understanding how they made decisions. It was not my intent to be a career banker, because that's too conservative for me. I wanted to understand how they made decisions. And so I stayed there, I think, for a couple of years. And then I left and went up into this real hardcore community, raised some funds there for the minority businesses, small minority and women-owned business in that community. And then I was approached by a friend of mine and said, Stanley, there's this opportunity here that you may want to take a look at. I said, well, what is it? He said, well, the state of Maryland has this program called the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, and it's designed to provide financing for small minority and women-owned businesses. They're looking for an executive director. I can introduce you to the guy that's running it. Blah blah blah. So I went, I interviewed, and I got the job. And I was the only person in the organization. So literally I had to build it literally from ground zero.
So what did you do? How did you do it? What were some of your early ideas there?
Well, from the research that I did when I was in graduate school, I realized there's different kinds of capital. There's short-term capital, there's long-term capital, there's equity capital, there's debt capital. And so, you know, and if a company is going to grow, the company needs all that kind of capital. Okay, you need equity capital for startups. Okay, you need a different kind of capital, growth capital for business that's going to grow. And there are times where you need a combination thereof. There's always a need for surety bonding. I don't know if you are all familiar with surety bonding, but it's a critical piece of financing in the construction industry. And so I sat down because I had to recruit a whole team. I sat down with the team and we developed a strategy, what we call a continuum of financing products, where we can birth a company with equity and stay with that company to a strategic exit, including going public. And we've done that several times as well. So we can birth them with equity. We can provide growth capital with term financing, equipment financing, et cetera. Okay. And we could provide lines of credit, you know, all of the kinds of financing that a company needs from birth all the way to exit, if you will. If in fact companies get to the point where they want to exit, they want to sell their business, et cetera. So we call it a continuum of financing products. So when a company walked in our door, it depends on where they are in the life cycle of their business. So we can birth them. Okay, they may be in a growth strategy. Okay, so depending on where they are, they can stay with us from birth to exit.
Mm-hmm. And that was from the public agency?
Yes.
Position?
And we did have some private funds as well.
Mm-hmm.
We did have, and by the way, over the years, my partners and I became very skilled at writing and introducing legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we even impact some of the banks as well, because they were getting concerned about that our fund, we didn't have a cost of funds. Okay, and so we could lend and invest at a cheaper rate. So they started getting real concerned about that. Okay, so we came up with that strategy. We have all of that under one roof. Okay. And that has really helped us in terms of the number of kinds of businesses that we've been able to grow and develop, et cetera. And part of the state's funding, they're also looking for economic impact analysis. Okay, they want to know for every dollar we spend, what is the economic impact of that dollar?
The state is interested in that.
Yes, very interested in that. They want to know what their return of investment is. If we put X number of dollars into the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, et cetera, what's going to be the return? And they're looking for jobs, and they're looking for taxes coming back into the state and local coffers. And so this is where my Morgan and Carnegie Mellon training really came in, because we knew how to analyze data, we knew how to collect and analyze data and tell the story that needs to be told. quantitatively, not what we think. Here what the numbers say, guys. Okay, and you can bring in your economists and look at it and whatnot. And we help an economist develop their econometric model that would determine what our economic impact analysis has been over the years.
Yeah. Did you learn anything about what kind of businesses? I mean, was it a real hodgepodge of businesses that you worked with, or were there a certain set of industries that did really well from birth to exit? And can you tell us a little bit more about the variety of exits?
Sure.
Going public isn't so fashionable these days, and sometimes people don't want to give up, but need the equity, but don't want to give up ownership. I just wonder how you navigate that.
Yeah, there are a number of ways, and a lot of that depend on the entrepreneur as well. Okay. Some entrepreneurs only want to grow to a certain level because after a certain level, it takes over your life, particularly if you don't have the kind of people around you to help you think. If you have to do all of the thinking, that's overwhelming. And so you need to have people around the table that's smarter than you are. Because if you're the smartest person around the table, you have a problem. Okay? So you want to have competent, very competent people. The first person I hired when I took over the state program was a young lady by the name of Catherine Lockhart. She worked with me at the bank. And the primary reason I hired Kathy because she was 10 times smarter than me. I mean, she was really brilliant, okay? And so I had to build a team, and then she was, so I said, well, Kathy, here's what I need. I just had to tell her what to do, and bam, it's done, okay? And internally, she ran the shop, okay? And she knew that was my mantra. You have to have smart, confident, intelligent people around you. Some folks don't like that, by the way. Okay, I relish it, and that was really how we, as a team, really built the organization. We when I got there, we was only able to a maximum loan was $150,000, specifically focused on government contracts. And so over the years, we've introduced close to 35, 40 pieces of legislation to really build this organization so that, it could really, really be very effective, but not only that, but can sustain itself, over a long period of time, And so that led us to, by the way, we actually privatized. And what I mean by that is the state only can provide a certain amount of money. And so we wanted to go outside and raise money from different sources, both public and private. Okay. And so we had to introduce legislation to do that. We did. We were successful. And we also approached the Small Business Administration. They have this program, the Small Business Investment Companies, where you could get a license, if you will, and you could get leverage from SBA. And it used to be at 1.3 to 1. Mm-hmm. Now I think it's about 2 to 1. And so we wanted to do that. And the SBA said, hey, guys, you don't have any private money. We need your private money to leverage public money. So we've always been very creative. Long story short, in the federal SBA legislation, it said private. So we went to our congressman and asked him to help us get the definition of private capital changed so we can use our public capital to leverage. And we got it through. The SBA hated us, still hate us to the day we did that. But we were able to get it through, and we've helped a lot of companies. And so that's actually how we became private.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And are you also
that state allowed us to set up a private entity, but continue to manage the state financing programs.
I see. And who were you raising funds with on the private side at that point?
We were going to banks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We were going to some individuals,
Mm-hmm.
some corporations. Okay. So it's a combination of sources that we were going to raise funds, and those funds that we raised, most of it was private, and then with that we could leverage that to get SBA dollars as well. And so we did that, and then we did a number of other sources. Now, because access to capital, is very prominent now, particularly for minority businesses, and given the environment that we have here in this country now, there's folks want to, what we call get into heaven, and we want to help them get there. So we are working with both private and public to get dollars to invest in our communities, and the returns, has been good. Now we've had losses, yes, absolutely. Matter of fact, you're not taking any risk if you don't have losses.
Right.
Okay. Yes, there's no question about it. But it's been a combination of a strategy to leverage initially public dollars from the state, get legislation through so to supplement and complement itself, and then also get capital from the private sector. We are looking at an RFP right now for this utility. They want us to respond to set up a fund.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you were giving you were being those smartest people at the table for a lot of these companies through this continuum of capital model, where they could come in, have an idea, or maybe be in the middle of a business that needed some growth, and they were not only getting this portfolio of capital available to them, but some technical assistance. Was there technical assistance?
Oh, absolutely.
And innovations that you were doing on that side that
technical assistance was a very, very important part. As a matter of fact, our team, and by the way, my team was based on the skill set that I wanted for my team was and is accounting. Because accounting is the basis of finance, okay? And so I didn't want a building full of people. So to work for me, you needed to have 2-3 skills, and you do them well, okay? And so one of those skills is accounting. And so as an accountant, and given the market that we're dealing with, we wanted to be able to go into the company and look under the hood, if you will, okay? And so we would go in, our folks were trained to go in and do audits, okay? Looking at their model, their capital structure. Does it fit the business that they're in? And we develop what we call a SAM model, Success Assurance Model. And that comes with the financing, okay? Because a lot of times financing isn't always the answer. It's what you do with the money once you get it, okay? And so we develop the Success Assurance Model, where we'll go in initially. Sometimes we'll just do it up front. We'll go in and look, here's our process. We want to come in and do an audit. Say, well, you haven't lent us any money and whatnot. I say, well, That's true. Okay, I said, for a matter of fact, we are considering it. All right, and that's part of what makes us comfortable in lending or investing in your company. We want to, we want to look up the hood, and we would like to do that. Now, some folks don't like that, and that's a single. Okay. But typically, they feel as though we have a pretty good reputation. We're looking to help people. We're looking to help businesses grow and develop and hire people and strengthen the economy and make money simultaneously. And you can't do that. So that's what, so along with the financing comes this success assurance model, upfront and on an ongoing basis, depending on the skill set of the folks in the company and the companies that we're looking at investing. Some of them have a good a group of folks have the right kind of skill set. Some of them don't. But it's the willingness, if they want to grow their business, they're willing to help us get where we know they want to go and where we want them to go so that we can get our return on investment and go and help some other folks.
So let's talk a little bit more about the supplier procurement side of things. What have you seen about how they work well, where they go wrong? Is some of the 40 pieces of legislation that you passed related to making those work a little better?
Well, our legislation really didn't necessarily deal with procurement. Okay. We felt as though that we can't be everything. You can't be good at everything. Okay. So even though we knew a lot about procurement, because our first program dealt with government contracts, we started off with financing government contracts, and we still provide a lot of financing for government contracts. And so the key to that is to dealing with government contracts is that you want to make sure the entrepreneur knows what he or she is doing, okay? Because if you provide the work, you're going to get paid, okay? And we started off there, just grew from there, and we financed a ton of business in the government contracting arena. Matter of fact, one of the gentlemen that we financed, we birthed and took him public in about 7-8 years. Gentleman Maurice Darcy, and we still do a lot of government contracts because one of the things we do, we control the money. We make the investments and we get what we call an assignment of the proceeds. So when the check is cut, it's cut jointly to the entrepreneur and us, and it comes to us. And so we help them manage their cash as well. And that's always something very, very important in helping these entrepreneurs manage the money that they have. In addition, we make sure we get our funds too as well. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. Do you think, like, let's say the state of Connecticut, I'm not entirely sure what the state of things are here, but let's say they want to use a supplier procurement program to build capacity in businesses because there's a gap between what the state needs and that's a perennial gap. How do you ever fill it? How do you ever, that gap becomes the excuse as to why those procurement dollars don't go in one direction or another. Have you seen that work where you can take, whether it's partnering with other firms, or what are some strategies there that you've seen work pretty well in terms of, using those procurement dollars in a way that can help build women-owned or minority-owned businesses that might be close, but there's maybe a capacity gap, or just they haven't done something that big yet? And how might a state or a set of intermediaries organize?
It is a great way to build a company, okay? Because you provide that product or service, you're going to get paid, all right? And what happened to those dollars once you get paid? And by law, both at the state, I know Maryland does, both at the state and federal level, by law, they have to do a certain amount of work with small businesses and also with minority and women owned businesses. Recognizing, I think what's really missing in there is good quantitative analysis of the technical assistance. Okay, they have some organizations that do that, but if you have someone in between there, if you will, that they get the contract. Usually, most our experience and most of the entrepreneurs can provide the product or service. Actually, that's really not been a problem. The problem has been really how do they manage their resources? Okay, do they have the infrastructure? That's what we do with our SAM model. We help them put the infrastructure in place so that they collect the data and analyze the data. And also in terms of when they bid for the contracts, what's your bid strategy? I mean, that's a science in itself. Bidding on government contracts is a serious science, okay? And so what is your bid strategy in going after a contract? What's the probability, of you winning this one, you winning that one, I mean, this stuff is real serious strategy, okay? How they go at it. It's masterful when the entrepreneur really understands it and understand the politics behind it too, okay? Because there's plenty of politics, okay? But as I said, we've birthed government contracts and stayed with them all the way going public. So we've had that run. We've done that 2 or 3 times. And so we understand, and government contracts, by the way, government contracting is a great way to get into business. Okay, because they have, by law, they have to do a certain amount of procurement, and then the entrepreneur has to be savvy enough to position themselves with the various organizations, with the various elected officials, et cetera, with the various contractors, et cetera, to position yourself so that you could be in a position to bid on some of these contracts coming down the right, doing the due diligence and whatnot to make it a real business. But also one of the things we do is when we first deal with a new entrepreneur, we ask them a very fundamental question. What's your end game? Okay. And you'd be surprised at people that are in business that don't have an end game. So I don't want to make money. Okay, everybody want to make money. Okay, but how are you going to get there? As Kobe said, begin with the end in mind. And that is so true. Okay, and that's a question we ask all the time. What do you want to do with this business? Do you want to grow it and ultimately sell it? Do you want to grow it and you have some children that you want to take over? What do you want to do with it? So we can understand what your end game is, then we could make that end game straight line versus, going all over the place, to get back to the straight line. That's a very critical question we ask entrepreneurs. That's one of the first questions we ask entrepreneurs. And depending on how they answer that question, we have a lot of work to do, okay? Or, wow, this may be one of these straight line folk, that understand what their end game is. And we're here to just, help them get to that end game. The other piece that's important here is do we as the lender, investor, and the entrepreneur, is there what we call an alignment of interests? Okay, now what do I mean when I say alignment of interest? Entrepreneurs, they're entrepreneurs because they want to do their own thing. That's why they're entrepreneurs. They don't want anybody telling them anything. They know everything. Okay, and that's why they're entrepreneurs. All right, and that's cool. Okay, you can do whatever you want to do, but if you're going to use our money, we have to have an alignment of interest. You know, and some entrepreneurs, they're the smartest people in the world, and we tell them, that's great, we want you to be smart, but tell us the whole story, because we are trained to find out what the real deal is. Please don't come running the game. We've been doing this there 50 years, so we are trained. So tell us up front what's happening with you, because if you don't, then that becomes what my girl Kathy called a credibility robber. Okay, if you don't tell the whole story, because we will find out. You know, we are trained to find out. Okay, tell us the whole story so we can make this straight line, and so that we can help you do your thing, make your money, get rich, hire people, create jobs, taxes back into the state, local, back into the economy. And so we want to help you out. Ideally, Kate, we really only want a company in our portfolio 3 to 5 years. Ideally, it doesn't always happen. Okay, but ideally, we saying, look, we only have so much time, we only have so much money. Okay, so we want to maximize our relationship. So please tell us what's going on in your company, what's going on with you, because if you don't, we're going to find out. Okay, and sometimes entrepreneurs think they're the smartest people in the world. But please, honesty is very important. Make sure we have an alignment of interest, that we're working on the same path to help you, okay, grow, develop your business, get rich, hire people, strengthen the economy, create jobs, etc.
So is there anything else about the SAM model that you want to mention? Is there I thought Tim Bates mentioned that there was a kind of almost accounting requirement or an accounting dimension to what you ask them to do as part of that, perhaps SAM model, or part of that engagement.
What Tim was talking about, as I said earlier, we'll go in to the company and do an audit. Okay, and we have the people to do that. Okay, we'll go in, when I say we go look underneath the hood, we're going in and doing audits of their books and records. Okay, we'll strip them down and see, do forensic audits. Folks try to hide with the numbers and whatnot. No. We have experts going in and doing that. Okay, and that's been one of the keys to developing the SAM model. Really understanding what's going on in the accounting, in the company, accounting and financially. Okay, you understand what's going on in the company, accounting and financially, you have a good feel what's going on in that company. Now, there's the marketing aspects and whatnot, etc. But at the end of the day, it's what's happening with that company, accounting-wise and financially.
Yeah.
Okay?
Can you tell us a few stories of some entrepreneurs who you've worked with, maybe from birth or maybe shorter term, just to give a flavor for some of the stories? Sure.
This guy, his name is Maurice Tassé. He was a Naval Academy grad. And he came to us and said that he wanted to start a government contracting business. So we said, Maurice, what do you know about government contracting? He said, well, Stan, not a whole lot. He said, but I have these relationships I've developed in the Navy, and some of them pretty high up in the Navy. I want to, talk to them about doing some, some work. And Maurice, when he first came to us, initially his concept, we said, well, okay, what kind of security do you have? What kind of collateral do you have? He said, man, Stan, I don't have it. He said, the only thing I have, man, is my mother's home. We said, really? He said, yeah, I don't own anything, man. I haven't built any, wealth and whatnot. I've been in the military, the Navy, or Arctic, So I said, is your mother willing to put up her home? And he said, yes. So I said, you know what? We're going to take it because we know you're not going to have anything happen to your mother's home. Okay. And so Maurice was that guy that we birthed. Okay. Ultimately, he wound up going public. He developed some technology, but in between, Maurice was at a point he was doing everything. Matter of fact, he did well. He went down to Alabama and bought a manufacturing company. We said, Maurice, what the hell are you doing buying a manufacturing? You don't know anything about manufacturing. He said, well, Stan, is in line with our business and whatnot. I said, okay, but Maurice, you don't know anything about manufacturing. What are you doing, man? So he wound up blowing that because he didn't know anything about manufacturing, and it was in Alabama. He was also a guy that once he got to $10 million, he didn't have a CFO. We said, Maurice, you must have a CFO. You can't do all this stuff in your head yourself. You have to, give this to other folks, man, because, you're not a accounting guy and finance guy. You're an entrepreneur, And so we had to do some things to get him on track, but he ultimately wound up selling the company, for a nice piece of money. And we made out very well because we were equity investors in it early on. There was another lady who was very smart, and she was actually in the accounting business. And earlier on, she wanted to develop, she didn't call them franchises at that point. There was some other, she wanted to basically opening offices, around the country. And she wound up, doing pretty good. There was another company that young lady that came to us, and she was in bankruptcy. And she had a contracting business, construction business, and she was in bankruptcy. And she came to us, she had some jobs, and we did our due diligence on her. And the folks in the community said she was a good contractor. Just that, the financing part of it was a challenge for her. And, her team wasn't strong, but in terms of being a good entrepreneur, knowing how to bid on the contract, knowing how to make money on the contract, she knew it. She just needed structure built around her. So we brought in, someone to help her structure her business in the right way. And she wound up doing well, actually, and selling the business. Now we've lost somebody too, of folks that we thought were great, but we lost our shirt on them, So it's been a interesting experience over the years. But we love it. you know, and I have a great team. I've been blessed with a great team.
Mhm.
Okay.
So just to clarify, the Meridian is the privatization of the public entity, and so that's a kind of
Well, the Meridian is the private management company that manages the public entity.
got it.
Okay, so now we manage that for the state, but we have other funds that's under Meridian's management.
Got it.
As well.
Yeah. Let me ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll hand it over to the students too, because I know we're getting to time. We've been thinking a lot about the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Greater New Haven, and there's a real split between innovation-driven entrepreneurship, and we've got the university tech transfer group, and the sort of barbershop, small, medium enterprise. How do you guys think about those two sets of opportunities? And do you only go for growth-oriented, innovation-oriented entrepreneurship? What's the state of things, just in terms of thinking about the kind of businesses you see having potential from where we sit? We've got the retail, transforming. We've got automation bringing so much stuff to a new level. What's your view on where we are now? What are the businesses you're excited about when you see them show up in your pipeline? Do you make those?
Well, the tech stuff is very sexy and exciting and whatnot, and we've in Maryland, is pretty technology driven, particularly given our proximity to Washington D.C. and all of the government contracting opportunities, and that's really, a lot of it is driven by technology, and you have the universities around it, tapping into all those government contracts and developing all the weaponry and all of that stuff. Okay, and we like that. Okay, but also simultaneously, we're looking at the opportunities in all areas, and how can we develop businesses that have product and services that's needed in these communities to really help these communities grow and thrive. Okay, I live in the city. I live in Baltimore. I live in Northeast Baltimore, and I made a conscious decision to live in the city of Baltimore because my wife is from Montgomery County, right outside DC. Very nice. She grew up there, has property there, but I didn't want to commute out there, Plus the fun, the challenges is, I think, in different parts of our society. And so, my partner and I, we look at communities and connect up with Morgan because it has a urban institute there, and looking at how do we build the economy? How do we help strengthen the economy? How do we help influence the powers to be to make good public policy decisions? Let me give you an example of one that was really a really bad decision. Transportation drives everything, in Baltimore, they were in the process of building what they call a red line. And this red line was designed to get the folks in the city out to the jobs in the suburbs. Okay. And great idea. All right. And the current governor basically came in and cut the funds for subway, rapid transit, to get the folks in and out, okay? And put in place a bus system that has been horrible. I mean, really horrible. So it has negatively impacted the economics of Baltimore City. You know, so the folks in the city can't get out to the suburbs to get to the jobs, okay, because they don't have transportation. And the bus system was so, nobody uses the bus system. Okay, it's so screwed up. You know, that was a horrible decision. So what do we do as lenders, investors, etc., to have some impact on what's going on in Baltimore and what's going on in the cities? But we're here in Baltimore. What's going on in Baltimore? You know, how do we? So we are sitting down with the current mayor, because it's the current governor that made that decision about transportation. Okay. And so we want to sit down with the current mayor and say, okay, how can we help you? What's your strategy? What kind of funding? What kind of business? What's your strategy for building the infrastructure of the city? Now, the city has some pretty good, you know, transportation and other items to work with. I mean, you have some strong institutions. You have Johns Hopkins there. You have University of Maryland there. You know, you have some major corporations there. It's a seaport city. You know, so it has, you know, we are what, Washington D.C. is right down the road from us. You know, and so there are a lot of positives. How do we really develop a strategy, interconnected strategy, to strengthen the core of Baltimore and maximize its potential? The current governor blew it, and he said he had presidential aspirations. But in any event, so it's challenging. And the current mayor's a young guy. I like him. He's very bright, but you know, he needs a few gray hairs around him, if you will. But I think there are some great opportunities that's happening. One of the projects we are very, very excited about is this maglev project. I don't know if you heard of it or not, but it's essentially the bullet train. And eventually it's going to come up to Connecticut too. But right now, this maglev project is a serious winner. The train will leave out of Union Station and get to New York in an hour.
Wow.
Okay. So the impact, the economic impact is huge. They're going to be spending billions and billions and billions of dollars. The train comes out of DC, goes underground, okay, and goes right underground all up Prince George's County, which is highly political, and comes up at the airport. Next stop is Baltimore City. Next stop is Wilmington, Delaware. And then I think the next one is Newark, and then New York. In 1 hour.
Wow.
okay? The economic impact is absolutely huge, okay? And this Northeast corridor, I'm told, is the most populated corridor on the planet. So imagine you can live in Baltimore and work in New York. I mean, Kay, right now, if I have a meeting in New York, I can catch a 6:30, 7 o'clock train, get to New York, have my meeting and whatnot, and be back home for dinner. That's now.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine what happens when you have this maglev, this bullet train, getting from DC to Penn Station in an hour.
Yeah, that's going to be a game changer.
Yes. And by the way, it's going to ultimately go up to Boston. But this project is going to be a game changer. Now, we're in the middle of it, so we're giddy. Oh my goodness. Yeah. You know, there are going to be all of these contracts. They're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars. And then the rippling effect of those billions and billions of dollars. Okay, so now, but here's the challenge. Okay, I went to the opening, you know, they're putting it out, hey, we're going to be doing this. They had all the politicians there. Oh, you know, everybody's having a great time, you know, yes. So I'm sitting there, Kate, and I'm saying, I haven't heard anybody talk about access to capital and bonding for these minority women-owned business. No one. I'm sitting here waiting. Okay, so I'm saying, okay, man, I'm pumped, you know. So the guy came up who invited me and said, well, you know, as we are, you know, they had all the politicians, everybody there, etc. You know, so I raised my hand. Right now I'm fuming, right? I raised my hand. I said, hey, look, Tad, I'm hearing about this great project. Absolutely, it's a wonderful project. It's a game changer. But no one has mentioned access to capital and bonding for these small minority and women-owned businesses that you say you want to, you know, be actively engaged in this. So if you're going to be actively engaged in this, how are they going to get access to capital and bonding? So the person that they chose to oversee this thing is a company. He got there and said, well, Stan, you know, we're going to, I think we can get the banks involved. I said, listen, man, I've been doing this 40 plus years. Is that your answer? Come on, man. Are you kidding me? This is public money. You're required to have a certain amount of small minority and women-owned businesses by law. And none of you guys have mentioned access to capital or bonding. Blew me, I couldn't believe it. Mm. Okay, so afterwards, the guy's CFO came over to me and said, Stan, your points are well taken. Let's get together, et cetera, et cetera. I said, look, I'll be happy to meet with you, but you guys are here ill prepared. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I take it as an insult that something so basic as access to capital and bonding, which is required on these federal projects, and you guys didn't walk in here with an answer for this. Are you kidding me? Mm. So they've reached out and whatnot, and I understand we can work it up, blah, blah, blah. I said, man, come on, man. Come on, man. So it's still, Kate and your students, a serious problem.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to build this maglev bullet train and spend billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's going to take 7 years. I mean, a serious game changer. And haven't addressed one of the most important issues for small minority and women-owned businesses to participate.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they want to talk to us,
What would be the 3 things you would tell them to do there?
that we would do?
To do that, if you had been the one in charge of that dimension, what would you come in with the offer around those?
Well, I would use some of these funds to establish, well, not establish, you have some of it, to be used for these basic things. Working capital, okay, and obviously we would be forced to, we love to manage it. Working capital and surety bonding.
Mm-hmm.
There's some technical assistance and whatnot that you would have to do as well,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But without the capital and the bonding, Kate, nothing happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so the CFO came over to me afterwards and said, Stan, look, your points well taken. Let's get together, et cetera, et cetera. I said, look, I think his name was Phil. I said, Phil, I think you see I'm a pretty straightforward guy. Okay. And I do know a few people, in Washington, you guys gotta fix this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to fix this fast.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd be happy to help you fix it. Okay. At a cost, of course.
Right.
But to come to
it just highlights the lack of foresight and the way in which this is something that we've observed. You might have an era where everyone's getting it and working together, and then somehow that knowledge dissipates, a couple of people leave, and you have to recreate the whole thing all over again.
Yeah. But Kate, access to capital and bonding is imperative.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Right. For everybody. Right.
Okay. And they didn't even discuss it.
Yeah.
So the battle continues.
Yes.
The struggle continues. Okay. Now I'm state and local, because a lot of the funding is actually, most of the funding is coming from a federal. Okay. But there's a lot of politics associated with it, because it goes dealing with Washington, D.C., and dealing with Maryland, and dealing with all of these jurisdictions going up the East Coast. And everyone want to have, their say-so in this project, because it will be so impactful to their economies, actually all the way up the East Coast. So it can be complicated in getting these jurisdictions to working together. Let me just give you an example. Prince George's County was the first county coming out of DC. But right now, the train, there's not a stop in Prince George's County. The train actually comes out of DC and goes underground. And when it comes up from underground, it's going to be in Anne Arundel County. So right now, there's not a stop in Prince George's County. That's a huge problem political problem for this project. Now, ultimately, I think it's going to work out because there's negotiations going on right now with Prince George's County, because it's going to create a huge number of jobs, very good paying jobs. And they're trying to negotiate where they will have maintenance facilities in Prince George's County that'll hire a lot of people, very good wages, etc., so that they don't have to change the route. Okay, so there's a lot involved, a lot of politics associated with it, lots of money, but it's going to happen. There's no question about that, because the economic impact of this all the way up the East Coast is so huge that politically it'll happen. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but that's kind of how I see it. And actually, I don't know where you guys are planning on going and what you're planning on doing, once you graduate. But if there's any way you guys are interested in getting involved this project, you should check it out, because you will learn a lot. You'll get an incredible experience. You'll make some good money. And if you're entrepreneurial, you identify some entrepreneurial opportunities personally yourself. Now, I don't know if I answered your question or not. If not, help me out.
We had some high up in the Chinese government come to New Haven to meet with president of the university. And he was talking about the Metro North, which is the train down to New York. And he looked at it, and he asked Salave how many miles it was. And he told him, and he said, I can't remember what it was, 12 minutes or something like that. And we just thought, it's getting longer. It take more time than it did 10 years ago to get into the city.
Yes.
So the idea of that and what that would do for New Haven, that's what the story was about.
Yes. It's huge. I mean, how to deal with this whole redlining thing. We have some new leadership in Baltimore, and which is good. And also, by the way, my alma mater, Morgan State University, is playing a role, because they have they don't have a whole school of transportation, but a pretty strong transportation department. And so that's one of the areas, the redlining is one of the areas that they've studied, okay, because of the negative aspects of it that impacted particularly the minority community. And so they're at the table with the data, okay, and participating in helping to deal with this whole redlining issue. It's a big issue. It's going to be an issue all the way up the East Coast. So everybody should understand it. The test case is going to be this from DC really to New York. That's going to be the test case, because I think in that corridor there's a huge minority population continuing to grow, and they're going to have to dealt with head on. Okay, and everybody is gearing up, and that's why we're also looking at it from a small minority and women-owned business point of view, so that they don't get cut out, particularly certain communities don't get cut out of this huge economic thunderbolt, for lack of a better term, that we want, this economic impact is to be as broad as possible and not concentrated. And that's going to be a real challenge, okay? As I mentioned earlier, to not have the access to capital for these small minority and women-owned businesses to maximize this opportunity is a tragedy. Now, I think it will be corrected because, you know, it's such a high-profile project, and it's a project that impacts everybody. So I think I'm being optimistic, okay? I think it will be front and center because there are a lot of folks, the studies, like my alma mater have been studying this for years. This is not new, it's been working on for years. And they're dealing with that same issue you talked about there. How do we get around, you know, the segregation and redlining so that, you know, all the communities will thrive with this project? It's going to be challenging though, okay, because certain folks that's in power, you know, want to control it, but it's so high profile. I'm optimistic that and there's some key people that's involved with this that I trust, and won't be able to get bought off, if you will. I tell my kids, I said, well, you know, we're going to impact this as much as we possibly can, and you know, I personally have put in place a succession plan, you know, to keep this thing going. I think, okay, this maglev project is the kind of project that will unlodge prayerfully a lot that will go toward this whole redlining thing. I really do, you know, and it'll be great for the country.
Yeah.
And based on, you know, what I see is happening, and particularly what's coming down the road, it's always going to be challenging. And I think I know the change will happen with your generation. And so that's a heavy lift, okay, because of the mindset. But you guys, now that you're talking about this, you're seeing what's happening, and you're getting this information exposure. You have Kate exposing you guys early on in your career and seeing what's going on, and you all have to be committed to the change. I grew up during the 60s, and during the 60s, it was the Black Power movement. All right. And we took risks knowing that will create some problems for us. However, we were committed to it. I think your generation right now are in a position to really make significant change in this country and in society. Because if you don't, we have a real problem. And even though the environment in the country right now is unsettling, but that's what happens when revolution comes. Before the revolution, things are unsettled. And it's the younger folks who have broader vision to really see another society. As a matter of fact, I'm 60s baby, we came up doing Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all of these folks, and that was a certain philosophy. We wanted ours, okay? And we were aggressive about it. I think your generation can go a long way in changing the whole environment here in this country. And when you change the environment here, it impacts the whole world. Now, that's some heavy stuff I'm talking about here, but I know it's real. You're getting educated, you're being exposed to it, you're bright, you're there at Yale, but you want to think creative, and you want to have the commitment to change. And that could be risky at times, okay? But the world doesn't move forward without you young folk being committed to making the change, to doing things the right way so that everyone benefits. And when everyone benefits, okay, it's a win. I know they say capitalism is structured in such a way that everybody doesn't benefit, okay? But I think there's a tremendous opportunity for you all to have significant impact on change in this country. And when you have this kind of impact and change in this country, this impact will also have it around the world. Now, so it's a serious responsibility, okay? But the question my professors told us that, Stanley, what are you going to do to change society? What are you going to do to make things better for everyone? God has blessed you. You're healthy, you get an education and whatnot. What are you going to be committed to? Stanley Tucker decided to be committed to access to capital. And folks have asked me, well, Stanley, how old are you, man? When are you going to retire? I said, retire? What you don't understand, this is not work for me, this is my ministry. You don't get tired of your ministry. And I'm saying to you all have to have a ministry. Making money is great, living this good life is great, but what's your ministry to this country? What's your ministry to society? So retire at some point, but I'm healthy. My wife is a dietitian, nutritionist, and she's been to culinary school, and there's a great lake right in front of where I live. So we walk around that lake to stay healthy and whatnot. And so as long as I can do that, I'm going to be about my ministry. And I'm saying that's for all of you. All of you. You got to have a ministry that you're excited to get up in the morning because you're helping people, yourself, and you're helping society, and you're making good things happen. I think you guys are the demographic, especially right now. You see, there's a lot of challenges in this country right now, but you guys can make a serious change. But you got to be committed. It's not easy. But make it your ministry. We are very excited to see the interest in what they're calling impact investing now. That's what we've been doing for years. And right now it's hot right now. And we're happy that it's hot right now. Okay? Because it's such an important subject that in my mind can accelerate the change. Because don't you all ever forget my mantra, capitalism without capital doesn't work. So with this additional impact investing, whatever they want to call it, okay, we welcome it. We are getting all kind of folks coming to us now and saying, hey, Stan, you guys been doing this for years, here's a little bit more money, and we say, well, thank you, okay, and we'll get you the returns that you're looking for. But the returns are not just financial returns. The returns are economic returns, basic fundamental economic returns. And when we do our investing, we take our loans and we put them into an econometric model, and it spits out, okay, based on the amount of money that we are investing in our companies, and it deals with the jobs it's creating, the taxes coming back in the state and local coffers, the economic rippling effect. Okay, so hopefully this impact, more and more come into this, this impact investing, but we think we've been doing impact investing for years. Impact is just a new name for it. Okay. But we are very happy to see that there's more attention is being placed on the impact in investing. And a lot of people, a lot of corporations and whatnot are moving in that direction. We just concerned that it's not just the hot thing at the time, and so that it'll continue to have impact, and resources will continue to flow into this area, and students like you all that are studying this and hearing from me and others and whatnot, that you all someday you all may have a fund if that's something that you want to do. But whatever you want to do, you want to nudge the ball along the path that it's a win-win kind of situation. And when it's win-win and not win-lose, then everybody benefits, And for the group that you have here, okay, you're blessed, okay, that you where you are. You have Kate exposing you, giving you good exposure and whatnot. So you're blessed. And so you can form a career path that's good for you personally and your family, but also good for other folks around you. That's what excites us. That's what excites us when my partners and I, we get up in the morning, because every day we know we are making decisions that will impact people's lives in a positive way, where they can house, clothe, feed, and educate their families. So that's something to wake up in the morning for. It's challenging? Yes. Absolutely. I'm telling all of you guys, it's challenging. Okay? But we need you. And by the way, I am a firm believer that nothing in life just happens. God make things happen for a purpose. So Kate meeting Tim Bates was not by accident. And Tim Bates sharing with Kate that she talked to Stanley Tucker is not by accident. Okay? So nothing in life is by accident. God intended it for it to happen. And I appreciate the opportunity, Kate, that you allow me to share with you in your students.
The pleasure has been ours. It really has. And I'll definitely be calling you for coffee chat when I'm in Baltimore next time.
Please.
And we'll be in touch. And I just, on behalf of the students and all of our future podcast listeners, I want to thank you so much for your time and all the generous insight you shared with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. You could always call on me.